Hey everyone, welcome to the Totally Well Show. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. The Totally Well Show is a place where we get curious, ask questions, and explore everything to do with health, wellness, fitness, personal development, and all the things it takes to help you live a strong, joyous life. My guest is Annemarie Tolman, RN, MSN. Annemarie can be reached on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and not Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, those three. And at Annemarie.Tolman.com. ANNEMARIETOLMAN, 1L. And reach out to her. She is has developed a system called the 3 Brain Solution, and has elements in her practice of helping people work with trauma, with energy and frequency, and changing mindset. And lots of other things. So if you are a high performer who really wants to make a change in your life, then you are probably a great client for Annemarie. So I hope you'll reach out to her at Annemarie.Tolman.com and enjoy our episode today of Totally Well, where we get into the 3 Brain Solution. Thanks a lot for joining us. Enjoy the show. So welcome, Annemarie. Thank you so much for coming on to Totally Well Show.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
And just for a formal introduction, this is Annemarie Tolman, and I want to spell it for you because it can be spelled in so many different ways. You can reach out to Annemarie at Annemarie.Tolman.com. So it's ANNEMARIETOLMAN. So it's just 1 L. I'm tempted to always put a second one in there. It's not Toll House, it's Tolman. And also LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Annemarie Tolman. Reach out and follow, like, comment, and connect, because we all love to connect with you. So Annemarie is an RN, MSN. We connected on LinkedIn and in search of people to collaborate with and share. And Annemarie's also been on my Rock Bottom Syndicate to talk about a rock bottom time in her life and how that opened her up to new possibilities. So here, I'm going to hand it over to you, Annemarie, to tell us a little bit more about what you are doing and what you're doing now with your 3 brains.
Awesome. Yeah, it's an exciting topic. I love to talk about it. So thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a nurse. I came from the Netherlands. I had my basic education in the Netherlands, and then came to the United States and started at Hopkins and got my master's there, worked there with oncology and bone marrow transplantation for many years, and was actually having a really good time. And then we talked a little bit about at the rock bottom about my son who passed away, Daniel. At that point, I was really going high, right? I had my own research team working with on acupressure, doing it at Hopkins, was a senior clinical nurse, did all this stuff. I did some really cool stuff in internships at Georgetown, getting my master's on ethics committee, and really had a really high going career, right? And I loved it. And then my son came in, and my 4th child, and he passed away after 4 days. That changed a lot for me, and that really brought me back and to that rock bottom, right? We talked about before. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want to be different. I want to do things differently. So I stayed home with my kids, homeschooled them, traveled with them, and then this thing came back. Like I still want to make an impact into this world. Mm-hmm. So I had let go of my license in that point. I got my license back as an RN, and started working looking at hospitals and what I wanted to do. And I was like, I don't want to work like this anymore. The amount of kind of the administration, the amount of the lack of contact with patients, the patients who were kind of coming into a revolving door that I saw, and with massive amount of medications and issues, but not really finding a solution in that system. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I don't want this. And at the same time, there was a lot of personal growth going on as well, where my 16-year-old son had issues with just being more withdrawn. Nothing crazy, but more withdrawn, gaming. And I couldn't help him. He didn't want to go see a therapist. Mm-hmm. And so then I was like, and then it landed something on my lap, which was a healing modality. It was all around frequency and energy work. And I just decided, okay, why not? And I went there for 4 days and changed my life.
Was this a conference or a course you took?
It was a course. It was by Carolyn Cooper, and she actually still does the course. And but I think the biggest thing for me was becoming aware of all this this different universe almost, right? A frequency of energy, how you can sense things, how you can feel energy, how you can feel, how you can change things. And I was there. I became so aware of my gifts and ability to sense people, to sense what's wrong with them, to sense what are real issues, how can they get over emotional trauma. So I started becoming aware of that. And I also became much more aware of my own emotional trauma that had built up over years, very, very, very small things from my childhood as well, but not being always a people pleaser, right? Never being good enough, all that stuff. It wasn't anything huge. I didn't have major anxiety or depression, but it was this constant feeling of never feeling good enough. And I was giving it to my kids as well, and giving to my environment as well. And so I was like, I got to do something with this, right? There's a whole new world that's opening to me. And so I just jumped in and I put my Kindle up and I'm like, I'm a nurse entrepreneur. I'm a healer. And if you're interested, then come and do this with me. And people came. That was kind of the amazing thing. And I started working with people on how what their thought process was, right? And then what their energy was and how they could shift that. And so I started working with business owners and who were stuck in their businesses. They were afraid to go on Facebook Live. They were disorganized. And it didn't have to do with the systems because that's what they tried, right? They tried to get systems in order. But what really was on a heart level, they were emotionally scarred as well. And they were not able to be consistent because the way you relate to one thing is to relate to everything, right? So
I'm going to jump in if that's okay. I want to go back to systems and make sure I understand when you talked about systems, what were you talking about there?
Well, in any kind of business, we often think, okay, if we just are putting this system in of this calendar, right? Or the system in of a certain advertising, right? A certain advertising way of putting ads on Facebook, for example. Or if we just go and follow a certain way of doing business, then that's going to be the solution.
So it's almost the same as with me. If I give you, here's what you eat, here's your menu, you're fixed and you're not fixed.
Right.
Okay. So instead of going from the mechanics and the systematic recipe or cookie cutter approach that worked for Jane or worked for Susan, you personalized it.
Yeah, I personalize it and I look at how is for example, I had one client who was completely unable to give up any of her work. She had a successful business, but she was totally overwhelmed and overworked because she was trying to do it all themselves. And that was part of her past and having to do everything herself all the time. When we started working on that and shifting that, and she was able to give some of her work to other people, I mean, her business exploded. It literally did. She went from $4,000 a month to literally over $50,000 a month.
Wow!
Just by doing that. And it was that emotional shift, like, oh, I feel safe. I'm allowed to actually give this to other people. I don't have to do this all by myself, right? And so it was that emotional shift with the systems that she already had, that and her own phenomenal mindset that kind of ultimately made it possible to do that. So yeah, I started doing that kind of coaching, and I think it was kind of interesting, right, to go from that very much that career at Hopkins and being home and then suddenly doing this. And it was just jumping in. And I think it was just jumping in knowing that I had something to give to this world. And sometimes I always said I only was this much ahead of my clients, right? Sometimes we think we have to be so much further ahead. And really that wasn't true for me. I learned as I went. I went to more business conferences. I went to more healing conferences. And that's how I stayed ahead of my clients. One step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an important point to when people want to start something new, to see there's this perfectionism, that if I'm not completely there. And that's really a lot the story of my life too, where I call it the wrong side of the glass, where I was so much of a perfectionist. I was just an observer of life, not a participant. And once I got brave enough to fail, and to really realizing that failure was the lessons I needed. So now I welcome failure because those are the lessons. Those are the things that what I know I need to do next.
I love it. And that's so, it's so right. I think in business, we often see people who are really disorganized, right? Or they are very perfectionistic. They have to do everything right. Killers. It's a killer for business. Any kind of entrepreneur, if you do that, you're never going to get out of the starting blocks. You never do. The disorganized, you never actually get organized enough to have clients. I mean, I was so disorganized that I had good paying clients and I would forget their appointments. Some of these clients stayed, but there was something I must have done good but it was crazy. And so for me to shift and suddenly, I really can't do this. I need to look at my own emotional state and why am I forgetting these appointments, right? It's crazy. But it was because of being insecure, of not feeling good enough and all that kind of stuff that I kind of forgot these appointments. It's crazy. So I could have put in 100 systems, right? To a calendar. I mean, I even had that. I had reminders and I still would be late on the calls.
Yeah.
And you can't do that when these clients depend on you. It's so being able for myself to shift it as well and say I got to be on a more secure attachment state, right, to these clients and to give them what they need changed a lot in my business as well. So
wow. So how did you deal with that particular thing? How did you recognized it first, right? So how
I recognized
did you change it? What did you have to do?
I actually went to an own healer myself. I have a Marla. She is one of my healers. And so I found my own healer as well. And she helped me go through, again, false belief systems and things like that on an energetic basis. Because I do believe that frequency and energy makes things go 10 times as faster or 100 times faster than regular talking things out. So she really helped me to look at it and then say, okay, how can you attach in a more secure way to yourself first and foremost, right? And then how can you then secure yourself to your clients and clients or patients, but mostly clients at this point as well. So that's what I've started to do. And also I noticed that once you get that in your own body, then you're also able to teach it. I think you need to get things in your own body, right? So for me, I had to deal with my own emotional trauma as I was also teaching it to people. I don't think you need to be done with your past, right? I don't think you need to be perfect again at that. But you did at one point get it into your body. So for me, I need to feel more secure in my body, myself, and with my clients. And that's when also a lot of my business grew as well. And I was able to teach to them as well. How do you get more secure in your own body? How do you feel more safe? And how can you then feel safe in your business as well, right? And getting criticism and things like that. Because that's not a big one. People are just afraid of hearing no. That's not a huge one, especially for women. When they're just afraid of hearing no. And if you're constantly afraid of hearing no, then you're never going to put yourself out there. It's going to be really hard, right, to put yourself out there. Yeah. And so it's hard to go on Facebook Lives, and it's hard to talk to people, and it's hard to go to networking meetings because you're always afraid that somebody's going to say no. And somebody's going to say no, right?
A lot of people are going to say no. Get used to it, right?
Right, get used to it.
But it's not a good feeling if you're coming at it from that place of trauma or something where you're not enough.
Right.
I can see why people want to avoid it. I definitely do. It's for me, it's still a very take a deep breath. This you don't know what's going to happen. It's not as bad as you think, but they might say no, and really push myself to go out there. And most often I'm surprised that people don't say no. They say more often say yes, but but they do still say no, and I'm ready to prepare for it. The other flip side too is learning to say no.
That's true. That's true. That's not a big one too, right? Because we do too many things. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I teach my clients, it's almost like, and I often like to compare it to a snake because a lot of people are afraid of snakes. It can be any animal that you're afraid of. But I do a method where we actually bring the snake close, and it can just be a snake in your mind. Some people need a physical, but often it's just in your mind. And as you're doing that, you keep on touching your body. You keep on saying it's okay, right? As this thing that's very scary for you, and you switch the belief system from this is scary to it's actually fun if somebody says no. If you can actually switch that and say, okay, it's fun if it's okay. First of all, it's okay if somebody says no, but it can also be a little bit of a challenge. Like, oh, if somebody says no, well, how can I make this into a good scenario, right? I had somebody yesterday who was totally not into what I was doing. And we had just a meeting. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen. But at the end, I referred him to somebody. He referred me to somebody. And we had a really good collaborative meeting. And I think in the end, we'll do more things together, right?
Yeah.
But there was a point in that conversation where we both were like, okay, what are we doing here? Because we really are in different lines here, different paths. But that's kind of now I see it as fun. Like him saying initially no, like, well, how can we, right? And so in the end, we ended up having a fun conversation there. So
yeah, that's a tremendous lesson for people in life, that we're so just looking at the obvious choice. Like if somebody wants me to talk to them about their graphic designs, and I don't either have the money or the need for it, I might just say, no, thank you. And I've shut myself off to the possibility of who they know who might help me, right? Like they're all their tribe and all their people. Just because I don't need that one service doesn't mean I don't need that connection.
yes, very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
And
Yeah.
so that's one of the lessons that I've started to learn through LinkedIn, of like, you just never know what this connection is going to be. And again, it could just, they may have a parent, they may have a very, a contact that could help you a lot, who has, tons of followers or influence, who could support you in some way, or who knows.
Yeah. It's funny because I teach my team that as well, is when they go on LinkedIn, right, is to just connect. And you're right. And there's very few people I don't connect with. And LinkedIn is actually nice because you don't have as many creeps, I think.
Yeah.
So it's nice actually, because I think almost everybody, because they're somehow connected, right? It's nice. And I actually accept a lot of people, and I've gotten some really cool connections because of that. So
yeah, more global for me as well, that on LinkedIn, just for that reason, and being open.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear about, because the time is limited today, so I want to make sure I get in. I want to make sure I understand the three brains, and make sure our listeners understand that. But just before we do that, I'd love it if you could help define what you mean by frequency. So I interview a lot of people. I hear that term a lot. And even one of my coaches says, raise your frequency. And I'm like, where is it? And how do I do that? So if you can give me something that feels a little bit more concrete when you're talking about, because I know it's real, I just can't see it.
Yeah, and it's hard to see. And I always say to people, you can always feel it between your hands. That's often what I teach people, is to rub their hands and then open up. And you can start, if you really start open up and then start opening, like moving your one hand. Yeah. And then moving it the other way, you often start feeling frequency. So frequency is all around us. Yeah. Frequency is this radio frequency, light frequencies. But there is a frequency of, I would say, a frequency of life almost, that is holding all of this together. That allows me to even feel people that are all the way across the universe or across the world, right? Yeah. It allows me to be in touch. Like I have one person I work with in India, and I can just feel him. It's just very, very simple. It's so that's the frequency. It's the kind of the force. I always like to connect it with the force, made of force. But it's a force. It's a frequency that is in every single cell. It's around us. It's in between us. It's everywhere. And so when you tune more into that frequency, instant healings can happen. Instant awareness can happen. And I often think people, when you talk about the three brains, especially, I say, look at your brain, tune into your brain, but tune in to the energy and also kind of the emptiness. Sometimes people see it as a dark space, as a beautiful, expanded space. So what's beyond the physical brain? Can you start tuning into that? Mm-hmm. And if you start tuning into that, just becoming aware of their space, right, in between my brain, around my brain, and that space has essence to it, has consciousness to it, mm-hmm. then you can become more aware of what's going on in your own life and how you connect with people as well. It just, I think when we do that, so in Three Brain Solutions, just to really connect with that, I talk about, we have our thinking brain and our feeling brain and our sensing brain, right? Mm-hmm. The regular mind, as we think about it, the heart and the gut. That for me is the essence of three brains. And within that, there's all this frequency feeling. So you can sense space around your brain. You can sense space around your heart, and the same thing around your gut.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, why I came up with 3 brains was because I was doing so much around here. So much. Self-development like out of a zoo. I mean, Tony Robbins, I know everything. I've done so many courses around that. But that did not completely take care of everything. I think it's important, but it didn't take completely care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So then I really went to my heart and started learning on how to work with my trauma, right? Like I talked about, and also to open up the heart. And when you connect heart to heart, we've been doing it a little bit here, right? But when you connect heart to heart, everything again opens up, because the frequency of the heart is so much bigger. That's a physical, they can also measure that, right? We can measure this as well. This is an actual thing. The frequency of the heart is simply bigger than the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're only focusing on your mind of what you want, but your heart's not really in there, or you're not really using it, sometimes again because of trauma, it's just too closed off.
Mm-hmm.
And you can open. So when you do that, then your goals are going to be hard to reach. Now when you bring in the heart, suddenly everything starts moving much faster. So that's what I work with my clients, is how do you open up the heart? How do you let go of some of these emotions and open up to the space that's there? And then the gut is kind of the sensing brain, and that was kind of the last thing that came from me. But if you think about, we so often say, I know it in my gut, right?
Yeah.
And we know nowadays there's so much talk about the gut being the second brain. For me, it's the 3 brains. It's right, is the mind, the heart, and the gut. But our second brain, if you want to call it that way, has a whole neurological system. It has so many frequencies as well. It has so many neurotransmitters as well. There's a physical component to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
We get that sensing brain better on board. Then again, we're able to sense, we're going to let go of fear, and we're able to just be who we are into this world. And then when you connect all those 3, suddenly you're not just dependent on your mind getting what you want, but suddenly your mind and your heart and your gut are in there as well. And your chances of getting what you want, I teach by my team in the morning, we do an exercise where we really literally start writing what we want to create in a way that's already been created, right? So I'm so grateful, I'm so thankful, I'm so excited that my daughter, who is right now applying to law school, is getting, that my daughter has been able to graduate. Let me put it different, just to say it right. I'm so grateful and thankful that my daughter is in the most perfect law school for her. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's in the future, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel that here. At that point, my heart's in the game, my gut's in the game, because I know that's what she really wants. My mind is there, and it all is just becoming together. And I started writing that, like, she just started applying a couple of weeks ago. She literally has been accepted into 5 of the top 20 law schools already. And now she's an amazing girl, and she's done amazing things, right? I'm not going to, but part of that is opening up to that. And I do the same thing with my team and with my work and what I want to exhibit in the world. And so that's why I teach a lot to people, is how do you connect all those 3 so suddenly what you want can just come out into the world more. You can think better, you can feel better, and you can ultimately sleep better. So that's 3 BrainSolutions.
Yeah, it really sounds like you're using the whole essence, the whole body to make things happen, and that this synchrony between all the parts and the awareness. And one of the things I'm working on with people now, and this is so relevant to it, is it's not enough to have the thought, like, I want to lose weight, or I love myself, or you're beautiful. You know, I can stand in front of the mirror and say that, but if I don't say it with meaning, if I don't say it with emotion, if I don't feel it in my gut, then that doesn't ever lay down in my brain. It never gets real. I'm not behind it because it's not real to me. So so as an example, and you can tell me if this does what you're, if this was a good tool. I have twin granddaughters, 3 months old, and I was holding one of them, and actually both. I kept trading off, and I was rocking her and saying, I love you, I love you. And then suddenly, and of course she's looking at me, and I'm feeling this deep love, and I'm wanting, my eyes to go to hers, because that's what we can do at 3 months. Right. And she's looking at me and believing everything I'm saying, because I'm saying it with all my heart. You might not understand the words, but you're going to understand this feeling. And then it became me. I was holding me
Oh, beautiful.
as 3 months. And then I started to feel it. Like I'm saying I love you to me, but in a different way than I could. And it was so powerful, kind of uncomfortable a little bit, but became really real that she was representing me. And I felt it different than just an affirmation.
You're right. And I think, and I do several exercises like that with my clients when we open up the heart, because it's so beautiful. So what you did was so beautiful because you transferred that love that you also felt, right? And then you also felt it for yourself. And we can do that, right? Our brains are so magnificent that we can imagine anything. And even things like in the past when you haven't felt that love for yourself, if you start be able to do that right now, right here. And often I do say, yeah, imagine a thing you love, a child or a cat or a situation, right? Yeah. And you get into that feeling, suddenly everything opens up. And any kind of trauma from the past can dissipate. Any kind of things that have been bothering you in the present can dissipate. And even things in the future, what can be a different future then, right? Because you can really rewrite your future that way. So I think that's true. And I think that's all a beautiful hard work. So I think it's beautiful. And I think we don't do it enough, but yeah.
Well, what I'm trying to get my clients to do now is do it with intention, like that. This is before we talk about the mechanics, the structures, like you were talking about, or the macros of what you're going to eat and when. Let's talk about your beliefs. Let's talk about what you think and think is possible, and then practice this technique of being in touch and raising your frequency, being more open to possibilities, even with yourself. Because a lot of people come to us having struggled for so long, they don't even believe it's possible, right?
Right. And yeah, you're right. Increasing that belief, and that's also part of the mind again, right? But increasing that belief, I think is so important. And I also think that so there's also physical things we can do, right? To encourage those three areas: the mind, the heart, and the gut. And we can even ask ourselves. So I work with people with foods as well, right? And supplements, things like that. We can ask, like, even, is this food good for me right now? Is this to the highest, right? To my highest benefit to have this right now? If we're honest with ourselves, I mean, I know when I'm eating a cookie that it's not healthy for me. But there are things that are truly harmful for me, right? And there are things that if I would do in large quantities, that would be harmful. So I think when we start raising our bodies again to that frequency by eating well, by exercising right, by getting all the supplements and nutrients that we need, suddenly that can actually accelerate, and we can have so much more again of the life that we want, and our bodies can be so much healthier. So, and again, I think it's an awareness, because for some people, one food is really good and for another person it's not. Mm-hmm. And we can do all these testing, and we're getting better at doing biome testing. I think that's going to be something that's going to develop in terms of a test as well. But as we don't have that right now, I tell people, tune into yourself, right? Tune into your body. In essence, you will, in many cases, you can even hold a vegetable, right? And say, well, is this right for me or not? And get a feeling or emotion with that. So yeah.
That's amazing. Now, we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask, as far as the kinds of people that you like to work with, is it trauma, people who suffered trauma? Is it businesses? Is it nutrition, or some of each? Do you have any particular area where you feel like you like to zoom in, or that's your niche?
Yeah, I love to work with high performers, to be honest, like people who are go-getters in life. And that can be kids, it can be adults, it can even be people who are in their 80s, right? I'd like to be people who want to make a real change in their life. And for one or another reason have not been able to quite get there. They've done a lot of stuff, but they haven't been quite able to get to the ultimate level that they want to be. So I do love to work with business owners as well. I do teach as well in businesses about this whole entire concept. Can be as basic as talking about nutrition, can be as advanced as talking about all the frequency with it, or maybe it's just a different way of talking about it, right? But I love to work with high performance and moms especially too, who are saying, I want to make this change. And I've done this long enough in my life. I want to make a change. And kids are fun. And I think every kid is a high performer in the end. Star. I love kids because they so quickly change. They are so able, like even chemistry sometimes there's really something wrong with their, just simply with the chemistry, right? I mean, you just need to add some foods and supplements to it. And the minute they change, they start suddenly being so much better in school, so much more attention, so much more happier in who they are. So that's one of my favorite kind of groups as well to work with, because I love kids.
I love this. It's interesting because a lot of times when we think of a niche, we think of a man or a woman or an age range, and you've really narrowed it down to people who believe in enough in themselves that they know there's something more, and they're going for it. So, but that could be a young athlete who wants to play at college or get into a law school or those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I love working with those people, and they're also willing to change, and that's I'm a high performer. I'm sure you're one too. I think we all.
Well, it's more than willing; it's wanting. It's
Yeah.
like not. It's not like you're all right. I'll do it. It's I want you to help me. I'm going there. Yeah. It's a different animal. Yeah.
And I think that's been true for my whole entire life. That's
Yeah.
I surround myself, and that's how I've lived my life, right? Whether I was a high performing nurse or I was a high performer at home with my kids, I was still a high performer, right? I still would travel, let's do things. So yeah, and I think I was just held back for a long time because of my stuff. And now, so I'm like, let's go. Let's change these small things that we know we can change, so you can lead the best life. You can really lead your best life.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your coming on and teaching us about the 3 brain solutions. And have you written a book on this yet?
No, not. I should do it, shouldn't I?
Well, rephrase that. Use some different language.
Absolutely. I will absolutely write a book. I think in a year or 2 years, it's going to be my time, I think, to write.
Even further, it's already written. I just need to get it out.
That's a good way. I love it. Thank you.
See, I'm a good student. You taught me well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, Annemarie, thank you again for coming on and sharing what you know. I do look forward to your book and helping to direct people to what you have to offer, how you can help, and you absolutely practice what you preach. So,
thank you. Thank you. This is a beautiful. I loved it. I love this. I love being with you here, and to anybody who's listening, I love it too. We need to change, right? We are to change. I really do believe that we are to change. Our planet desperately needs game changers. They desperately need people who want to make a change. So yeah, let's do it.
Well, my heart feels very good. I feel like I've met a tremendous resource in a person in my life that can be helpful to me. Just knowing you and seeing you and having you as a mentor, resource, or model for success.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Annemarie.